Welcome to Alan Skorski Reports. I'm Alan Skorski. Ever since October 7th, Jews around the world, but particularly in America, got a very strong wake-up call and a punch in the gut. What should have been a slam dunk global reaction in support of Israel, just the opposite happened. Hamas activists and their Marxist allies took over our streets and college campuses, verbally and physically assaulting Jewish students, holding students and university staff hostage, vandalizing Jewish institutions, chanting from the river to the sea, and calls for intifada revolution. Israel found itself being subjected to an international court, being charged with war crimes, while Democrats in Congress attempted a coup of Israel's prime minister. Universities threw the Jewish students under the bus as the media allowed the blood libeling of Israel to go unchallenged, while left-wing Jews called for ending support for Israel. Amongst our strongest allies were people like Douglas Murray, Richard Kemp, Evangelical Christians, and of course, Turning Point USA's founder, Charlie Kirk. On YouTube, Charlie Kirk is frequently featured, smacking down anti-Israel and anti-Semitic students on campus. On a recent radio show, Charlie Kirk made the following statements. I think some of the Israel PR is very cringe at times. On fighting for Israel on college campuses, he said, for those of us that are not Jewish, to make the contention when most Jews do not care about Israel that much. And third, he said, unfortunately, Jewish Americans have financed their own demise. Jewish Americans have financed these left-wing organizations. We will talk about these comments and others made by Charlie Kirk with someone who was at the radio show and spoke with Charlie on the air, followed by a 45-minute conversation with him afterwards. Today, I am honored to meet for the first time ever, best-selling author, host of the popular podcast Let's Go Uncensored, regular Fox News guest, passionate public speaker, and national ambassador for Jexit, Miss Daniella Bloom. Daniella, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Alan. We have a lot to talk about.
We do. So, I'm going to try, and I have some tech people. We're going to try and get some of those clips from that radio show, on the podcast. But let's talk about some of them. At the show, he said Israel has some major, major PR problems. We all know that. But is that really the reason why we are getting clobbered today? Did the government of France need to know that Israel's got a PR problem? Does the government of Great Britain, of Canada, of Australia? Are Jews really under siege now because of bad PR, or is it a lot more than that?
Well, it is no secret that we have bad PR. We say 3 Jews, 5 opinions, and to the credit of the Jews, we are so busy surviving, innovating, contributing, doing tikkun olam that we have not really prioritized a great PR strategy. And that is a huge part of the mass growth of propaganda and Jew hate disguised as anti-Zionism that we see in America and around the world. And it did not happen overnight. The other point that Charlie made was a lot of these liberal universities are funded by progressive socialist Jews. So when he's arguing with an anti-Israel Jew, this is a result of Israel's bad PR, because to a lot of these progressive Jews, Israel is no longer a priority. Israel is seen as the oppressor. And this is a problem that we should not have ignored, and we will not be able to fix overnight, but it certainly is not the whole picture.
Yeah, but see, and here's my contention. Israel's PR, it is what it is, but there are enough Jewish advocates out there. There's enough truth out there. And what I suggest is that the reason we're losing and Jews are in trouble around the world is because we are so outnumbered, so outorganized, and so outmaneuvered. I'll just give you a couple of examples. So I'm a little bit older than you are. I went to Wayne State University in Detroit about 40 years ago. Now, Wayne State University is about 20 minutes from Dearborn, Michigan, the largest Arab population outside the Middle East. When I got there, there were about a dozen pro-PLO, Muslim, and communist organizations. Alan Skorski was the first pro-Israel activist there. And by the end of my first year, every Arab on campus knew who I was. But if you look at the map now, look at Colombia and all that make the news. You've got 1,000 or many hundreds of Arab students with the flags because this is what they do. This has always been their mission. So to me, Israel could have had the best PR. It wouldn't have mattered. A lie told by a million people will always defeat the truth told by a handful.
I agree with you. As Ben Shapiro always says, two things can be true at once. We do have wonderful speakers. We do have the reality of Israel continues not to be played out, that we are a thriving democracy that has women's rights and gay rights. I mean, if people really understood who Israel was, they'd be rooting right side with us, but it is a numbers game. There's 2 billion Muslims in this world, but not only that, we have algorithms dictating what people see. So it is, good PR for Israel is not going to get shared because it's trendy to be pro-Palestine and stand against the oppressor. So we just have so many things against us. Even when we have good PR, does that PR get heard?
Yeah. So I'll give you another example. We've mentioned Charlie Kirk and Douglas Murray, and there are others like them who are so articulate and so classy. And then you watch these people like, again, on YouTube, you watch the Cenk Uyghurs or the Mehdi Hassans, the liars, the vile gutter people.
Yes.
And yet, even when it's told properly, we're still not winning. We have a Mossab Hassan Youssef, the son of
Hmm.
Hamas, a
Hmm.
Rowan Osman, but you've got the J Streets, you've got you've got
Yes.
so many. So again, there's something much more nefarious going out there. I'll give you
Yeah.
one more thing to throw at you. And I thought this for years. I don't know how I was so naive. We have groups like Memory, Middle East Media Research Institute, whom Fox News is always using their videos, and we have Palestinian Media Watch. Between these two organizations, we should be dominating because
Yes.
they have thousands and thousands of quotes directly from them that we're going to get the Jews. It's not Zionists. We're going to get America. You've got
Yes.
Memory has videos of imams in California, in Texas, and Michigan saying exactly what they're going to do. And yet, when Donald Trump says very fine people, it's the front page of every newspaper.
I think that's what more than anything pushed me to become a conservative, the national ambassador of Jexit, Jews who have exited the Democrat Party because of that said double standard. If it was any other minority group, Black, Muslim, trans, there would not be a controversy. When it comes to the Jews, a lot of this Jew hate, remember we saw with Harvard,
Right.
it has to be contextualized. The genocide has to be contextualized. You can understand it based off the resistance. I mean, there were proud signs saying rape is resistance.
Yeah.
And for some reason, when it comes to the Jews, there is a double standard. And I think it's because we are disproportionately successful. And everyone's favorite party, whether it's from the far left, the far right, up, down, every which way, everyone has their own reasons to come to the Jew hate party. And it feels almost unifying in some
Right.
cases when we see interesting bedfellows, especially from the woke right, that that are becoming a real issue today.
So that's something I'm going to get into because Charlie had mentioned that. But take a moment because you mentioned Jexit and Jews who have left the Democrat Party. And I'm very
Yes.
familiar with your, but if you would, can you tell us about Jexit and some of the people who are in your and what you've done to bring more Jews to the correct side?
Absolutely. Well, Siggy Flicker is our national spokeswoman, and she was just promoted to work under the Holocaust Commission. Trump just promoted her directly, so we're really proud of her. Jexit started on the East Coast with Michelle Terrace in Florida, of course, Freedom, Florida. And it's a home for Jews who are fed up, who are seeing that the Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party of yesteryear. It's been hijacked by the far left, who are unabashedly anti-Israel. And we want to bring back Judeo-Christian values. We actually work a lot with the Christian communities of our country.
Right.
The evangelical Christians in particular have been such a blessing and an asset. The Jewish vote is only 2% of our country's voting, but the silent majority of the Christians is, I think, 30. The Christian vote, I think, in general is 36%. And when you have 9 to 11 million Christians who did not vote in the swing states, that's what we campaigned on. We wanted to make sure that silence is compliance. You must use your vote. You cannot complain without voting. And we work very regularly with our allies today who stand unapologetically for Israel and the Jewish people.
Wonderful. And listen, I'm a huge fan of the Christian Coalition. QFI, they have been our strongest allies. And I always say this, our greatest allies are the Christian evangelicals, and our worst enemies are Jewish leftists.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So,
I like to call them, there's the term self-hating Jew,
right,
which I am not the biggest fan of because if you talk to a self-hating Jew, they would say, I don't hate being Jewish. I love bagels. I love comedy. But it's really the forsaken apologist, forsaking something great and sacred for the sake of apologizing to the other in the hopes that you will be accepted or there's a guilt complex. As a therapist, you can unpack that.
right. So it's interesting because I too recently said something about changing the label of self-hating Jew. And again, it's throwing them out there. I now call them Jews who lack any self-respect. And that Chuck Schumer is
Yes.
not a self-hating Jew. He's a Jew with
Yes.
no self-respect. Same thing with Gerald Nadler, same thing with Jamie Raskin, and a lot of the others in Washington who have thrown us under the bus. I want to get to another point, something that Charlie said, and this is something that I don't agree with, but maybe, he said something to you differently. And I think I read that Mark Levin also kind of chastised him on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, when he said that the pro-Israel now, and he mentioned Ambassador Friedman, that we run a risk of creating anti-Semitism or increasing it by calling for censorship or the arrest of people who are writing articles that are attacking Israel. And I didn't know what he was talking about. Anti-Israel columns go back to Thomas Friedman and before him. That's not we've never called for their being censored or arrested, but the people like the Mahmoud Khalils, their
Yeah.
articles were not criticisms of Israel. They were calling for the destruction of Israel, ending U.S. support for Israel, and then just ending the U.S. period. So, if you would, did he speak to you more about that? Because I didn't get
Yeah.
it.
I think I was also referring to Mahmoud Khalil. Like we can't
Right.
disguise free speech. There must be a distinction between free speech and inciting violence and being anti-America and anti-Israel because they go hand in hand. But what I think he was actually referring to was this bill that was presented to Congress. It did not go to a vote. HR 167, which is the title for it, that's not the real title, but the title that the woke right is putting on it is the anti-BDS Israel bill. It's not really Israel. It's a bill saying that any country that is friendly to the US, if there is active boycotting and divesting from, there will be penalties. Where I think Charlie was referring to, the amendment to this bill was already in place. It's already active since 2018. But the amended version would include businesses, private businesses, and individuals. There's a gray area there, and that to an absolutist uh, patriot, America First patriot,
Right.
to them screams all kinds of wrong because Israel is a foreign country and they should not be given favoritism.
Okay. I mean, so because what I read about it was, and again, I saw, okay, so there are a few Republicans who are clearly anti-Semitic. Tom Massey is one of them.
Yes.
Um, with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm not there yet. I think that she's a loose cannon. I think she's unfiltered. I think she's immature. I'm not there. And she said things that I don't like, but I don't know where she is exactly because she has voted for Israel And to me, the anti-Semitism are the people like the Ilhan Omars and the Tlaibs and the Presleys, because they come out and say their mission is to attack Israel, to attack
Yeah.
Jews. Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't there. I mean, if you feed her a line, maybe she'll respond, but that's not what she's in Washington for.
So, I'm very familiar with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I just saw her on an interview yesterday with Shank from Young Turks. I do think because she is a Christian and she has seen the double standards with anti-Semitism, she has spoken out against anti-Semitism. But what she's doing now is very counterintuitive because when Shank says we're giving over $312 billion to Israel in our lifetimes, that would be a chance for Marjorie to say, well, we're not just giving it to Israel,
Right.
it's a mutual investment. There's strategy there, there's return of investment, ROI. But instead, she says it like we should not be giving any foreign land donations. So,
Right.
Marjorie, sweetheart, it's not donations to Israel.
Right.
And you can't lump in wars like Russia, Ukraine, which get, 10 times more the
Right.
amount to Israel. And that's what's happening. And it's actually, it started with Tucker, who we used to love and adore.
Right.
Um, when you plant those seeds of why is Israel getting more? Is Israel controlling the government? When you start to plant those seeds of suspicion to
Right.
people who are already prone to be suspicious of the Jews, it is fanning the flames of anti-Semitism, whether or not you call yourself an anti-Semite.
I see with her though, I think that she is the perfect example of lack of education. Because again, she's very she's trying to be like she's like a poor man's Donald Trump. She's trying to be like him,
Right,
but she can't be. So she kind of
right.
gets aggressive and abrasive and says stupid things, but she doesn't know better. I don't know if she was presented with the facts. If she, again, I don't know. I'm still, jury's out with me and her.
Yeah.
And as far as again, someone like Rand Paul, he's a true isolationist. I don't take his positions personally. Um, Let me see something else. Charlie had also said that that we need to be careful because there is a rise, and he's seeing it within Turning Point.
Yes.
These conservatives who are not as pro-Israel as we are, or that they should be. Did he speak about that at all? Because I wasn't familiar with that.
Yes. This is what we spoke of off the air. He did say, I am seeing people with MAGA hats not being pro-Israel today. And and it's not necessarily because of the same issues of the left. Um, but this idea of why does Israel have so much power? Why are we indebted to them? Again, you're talking to the rise of young conservatives, and who are they listening to? They're listening to people like Candace Owens, they're listening to people on Joe Rogan who really don't have the education
Right.
and the authority on the subjects, but these are the most influential voices of today. People are turning to podcasting because of long form. They're tired of the news, they don't trust the news. But unfortunately, these big names don't are not bringing balance. They are not trained as journalists, and they are absolutely putting into the ears of these newly young conservatives, like names like Ian Carroll, Dave Smith, um, Epstein Island. They're making it all about the Jews and Mossad.
Right.
Any problem under the sun, it must be because of the Jews. And like I said, everyone likes a common enemy. Before the Jews, it was the government, right? Like the censorship. We all could easily align around that. But now the Jews are the scapegoat. And it is concerning because these are the future leaders in
Right.
Congress, in Senate, and it's something we have to pay attention to.
Right. So it's funny because I used to be a huge talk radio guy. Now I have XM Sirius in the car, so I listen to Fox. But I remember thinking, what would Rush Limbaugh, if Rush Limbaugh was here today, if
Yeah.
Charles Krauthammer was with us today, Tony Snow.
Well, if
Yeah,
Dennis Prager was available to
yeah,
speak today, it's
yeah,
terrible. Yeah.
yeah. So let me ask you a question. So how did you get to have that private meeting with Charlie Kirk after that show?
Well, I was a guest at the special Turning Point Donor Conference in San Diego.
Okay.
So it was an invitation only small event where we had easy access to Charlie, Matt Gates came, and you're around, some of the most passionate philanthropist Republicans in the nation because
Right.
Turning Point is absolutely a machine and it's growing exponentially. And in fact, I would like to further talk with Charlie and his team about developing a branch for who's Jewish students who are conservative on campus
Right.
because they don't necessarily feel comfortable going to Hillel and citing their pronouns.
Hmm.
And it's hard too because, off air, he expressed his frustrations with, you know, big, amazing entities like Stand With Us, who's doing incredible work. I know Roz, I love Roz, but he's like, we're going to all these college campuses. Where are they?
Right.
The only organized uh, organizations run by Jews are J Street and
Right.
Jewish Voice for Peace, who actually is nothing Jewish about it. But
Yeah.
the point is, I think also one of our biggest challenges as Jews, like we were saying earlier, three Jews, five opinions, we all agree majority wise in Israel and Israel's right to exist and defend itself, but we have very different political views. So when you have donations, you know, someone from Wild's perspective, she cannot be too unapologetic in one area because she doesn't want to offend the liberal donors. And then she doesn't want to be too far and offend the conservative donors. So our message becomes diluted, whereas Turning Point is loud and proud. They know who they are. They stand unapologetically for Judeo-Christian values, for our inherent freedoms. And I know Chabad does a great job too about being welcomed
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
bringing a positive
Yeah.
spin. But I do think it would also take the burden off Charlie to defend the Jews regularly. I mean, I could tell he is fatigued.
Yeah. You see it in
So
the
many of
videos.
his questions should
Yeah.
not even be about Israel. They should be about America. But unfortunately, what is trending is Israel this, Israel that. And, you know, for him to have to spend half his time talking about Israel when we have great people to do that. And so we'll see what comes of that.
But you know what? To your last point, because I watch a lot of the videos, he's being attacked by other people masquerading as Christians, and they're pulling, their cell phones. It says in the Talmud, so they're coming up there under a false pretense, and that's where
Yeah.
it comes from. I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative, but I have to ask you about your. So that's what it is. These are not people who want to know about Israel, because I've seen the ones where Jewish leftists have attacked it for defending us. Now, you mentioned end Jew hatred. So you brought up something that I thought about as well. These are good groups. They've got a good message and everything. But end Jew hatred is also a very parv, neutral name. It's not Students for Justice in Israel.
Mhm.
There's no such, it's not students against the Palestinian myth. It's not students
Yeah.
against the Nakba hoax. So we've got these very parv and neutral sounding names, whereas their names are all going after Israel and people, it's
Yes.
very specific. And that's something also I wish that we changed.
We do have an organization that I'll plug, SSI, Students Standing for Israel. And Charlie is a big
Okay.
fan of this
Right.
organization, but again, it's tiny.
Right.
And unfortunately, Jews in general have very small numbers at universities. So it makes sense to like team up with the Christians
Yeah.
because, you know, Kufi, Christians United for Israel, is doing it.
Right.
So I think, but if you unite with the Christians and you're a liberal, maybe you don't want to unite with the Christians because, you're into climate change and pronouns and, it's
Right.
hard. It's hard. But
Right.
we do need a stronger force on campus. When I was at UC Santa Barbara, in the 90s, it was a different university. APAC had a very strong chapter.
Right.
I would come on my bicycle with my Shalom Chaver bumper sticker. I would have my Tzahal backpack. I would wear an Israeli flag regularly. I had no fear.
Right.
We're in a very different world today.
Correct. Listen, when I went to college, again, I went with at a very bad time. There was no Palestinian Authority. There wasn't a recognition or legitimization of them. These were PLO terrorists. I mean, their chants were Reagan, Bacon, you should know we are all PLO. but it was still very different than we would bring in these top speakers to our campus, and they would come, but they didn't interrupt. They didn't shout the speakers down. They would wait. They would
Yeah.
ask questions afterwards, thinking that they were going to have gotcha questions. That was the worst that ever happened. Today, it's a very, listen, 20 years ago, I remember, it was liberals against conservatives. If you remember, an Ann Coulter or Pat Buchanan would go on stage, and then the campaign was to rush the stage and throw a pie in their face. Today, it's very, very different. The Marxists and the Palestinianists have adopted a very
Right.
new method. And now, here's the other thing also. Jews, I always say this, Jews go to school to get an education, make our parents proud, go out with girls and become, whatever
Yeah.
we're going to become in society. These students are coming from 5,000 miles away. They're not coming here to get an education. They're coming here to get into the universities to plant their seeds. And that's exactly what's happened. Excuse me. You've got faculty, you've got student bodies, you've got student government that are dominated by people who have come here from thousands of miles away
Yeah.
to take over, and they're succeeding. And that's where we're not stopping them, and they're being welcomed here.
I spoke to Alan Dershowitz directly about this when I had a chance to meet him.
All right.
Yeah, and I joked that has a chance to wake up like I did. I called him
Yeah.
a former liberal, and he's like, I'm a current liberal. I'm like, come on, Alan, come on, move
Right.
over. But he did say the classic liberals are very similar to classic conservatives, and he's right. But he was saying that's why myself and the late Sheldon Edelson would never donate to a university because the university has like an open door policy to socialism and anti-Israel, anti-Americanism. So if you are a Jew who falls in those categories, you will be hired. If you are a Jew who is a Zionist, who's
Right.
pro-Judeo-Christian, good luck. And this is not a coincidence. This is by design. We also know that universities are heavily funded by Qatari money,
Right.
which must influence that. Um, and it's crazy how the liberals themselves don't see that double standard. The fact that they're making Mahmoud Khalil and this other guy from Ecuador, the Maryland dad,
Yeah.
all of a sudden they care about free speech. Never mind the actual crimes they have committed. And, it goes hand in hand. Usually when you're anti-Israel, you are anti-America.
Right.
But they refuse to make that connection.
So there was a guest named as Ryan Morrow, and I'm going to have him on the show in a few weeks. He was on with Mark Levin a few weeks ago, and they did a whole story tying anti-Semitism with anti-Americanism, anti-police, and crime. And this is something that, again, I don't know how Democrats are. Look what happened in Canada, of all places. You've seen your country taken over with hostility. You've seen your police getting punched in the face. Like, what good has appeasing these people done for your countries? We used to think many years ago when there was a terror attack in France at a concert, many Jews thought, okay, finally, we're sorry for this, but at least France now will understand what
Mhm.
Israel lives through. Hell no.
Mhm.
Nothing to do with it. So while France is no longer France, Britain is no longer Britain, and so on, they're still appeasing them. So this way, it comes back to what I said before, that it's not about bad PR, which we have anyhow, but it's a matter of it's either another type of fear, or they think that by appeasing them, they'll leave them alone. But, and this way also, it's not even listen, saying that this is about anti-Semitism, it's like saying, yeah, Hitler, he was an anti-Semite. No, that's the least of his problems. We are fighting a much more evil force now than just, yeah, he doesn't like Jews.
Yes. Yes, I absolutely agree. It's very concerning, and a lot of people are refusing to see it that way. And, when you have Iran, the government of Iran, when you have Nasrallah, when you have leaders in Hamas saying first Saturday, then Sunday, death
Right.
to America, death to Israel, and you still choose not to believe them. I mean, the whole fact that Biden just lifted the
Yep.
sanctions that Trump had put in and gave a terrorist regime billions of dollars. We had no wars under Trump from 2016 to 2020. We had no suicide bombs. We had no issues in Israel. Israel was safe.
Right.
And as you know, how are we surprised that you give people who've made no secret of their agenda billions of dollars in good faith? And then Hamas, Hezbollah, all of them now have power. And then you somehow make it about Israel committing a genocide? Are you crazy? Are you kidding me? It's absurd.
Right. And this is the other thing that comes back to apartheid, genocide, ethnic cleansing. Three evil events or evil acts that have been hijacked from other countries. Genocide, you had the Holocaust, you had Rwanda. Ethnic cleansing, you had the Serbs against, in Bosnia. Apartheid is South Africa. And yet, these lies have been hijacked and they've been applied to Israel successfully, even though they couldn't be further from the truth. So there's such a lack of education. This is the failure of Jewish organizations. And you mentioned AIPAC. And to me, I think AIPAC today is toothless. I get their emails. I'm not aware of any of their success stories lately.
Yeah, it's sad because I mean the amount of times I hear APAC coming from Candace Owens and Pat Bet David, even people that I used to love,
Right.
and APAC is not coming out. I mean, at least I haven't seen. Maybe they have made a video, I just never seen it, and saying, let's just break down these myths. We are a
Yeah.
lobbyist group, just like any other lobbyist group. We're just doing it effectively. And there's a reason why there's a mutual strategy here.
Right.
Here's the reasons. Um, you know, the real estate, the I think the gun association and big pharma, these are huge,
Yeah.
way bigger lobbies.
Right.
Um, but they get no play. And, so again, it goes back to Israel is controlling the government. And then we have people like Massey, Thomas Massey
Yeah.
on with Tucker, who just fan those flames,
Right.
fan those flames. And no one ever wants to ask the question, why are America and Israel so connected? Maybe because they want to be, maybe because we stand for the same Judeo-Christian values. Maybe it's not always for a nefarious, sinister reason, but that's where people just automatically want to go.
Right. Danielle, we've got a few minutes left. I was wondering, is there anything else that you can tell us about your private meeting with
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk that we need to know and that you can tell us at this time?
Charlie did say to me, he wants to see more strength with the Jews. I think the American Jewish mentality, and you could say it's coming from trauma, is, tends to be non-confrontational. Like bow your head, get your degree, do your job, grow your business. And we've done amazing with that model. We've created
Right.
Hollywood with that model. But the Israeli mentality is we are here. We are here to stay. We have a right to be safe. There's 55 Muslim countries. There's 22 Arab. This is our only country.
Right.
And that message is lost and needs to be better delivered because the Jewish American is the American dream. And I think what his advice would be is that if you are pro-Israel, really own that
Yeah.
and be able to explain why that is. And like the Jewish American spirit is what makes America great. We are the best examples of the land of opportunity and why being pro-America is being pro-Israel.
Right. Daniela, that was beautifully said, and thank you so much. You're great. I'm a big fan of yours. I follow Jexit. I follow your work and the work of your organization, and I can't thank you enough for joining us today. And I look forward to speaking with you again in the near future.
My pleasure.
Okay.